Do you want the clicker? Or do you want me to do the clicker?
We'll just keep it. You can do it.
All right,
We're
here
mic
we go.
now. Hey, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. It's so good to see you today. Thank you for joining us. We're super happy you're here. Today we're going to tell you about the result of almost maybe 18 months?
Yeah.
Yeah, 18 months of work. And a long and values-driven process where there was lots of good, robust conversation, and we believe we're in a good place. We know you're going to have a lot of questions. We have time at the end for questions, so we're going to just go through our slides from beginning to end. You'll also hear from our transportation consultant as well during our presentation today, and then we'll take all of your questions at the end. Okay, so with that, welcome. Here we go.
So our agenda for today is to first talk about why change the daily schedule and give you some of that background. We'll talk about the process, which, as Mr. Lang said, is very values-driven, and we'll talk about those values as well. And then we'll go over the proposed schedules. So you have, I always say, bury the lead. We didn't bury you have it in front of you, so it's not like, wait, reveal moment, which apparently are very popular now in many areas. And talk a little bit about what's next. And then, of course, we'll have time for questions, and we'll have a time for the group to ask questions. And then if you want to stay after you have a specific question that you feel like that's really kind of unique to my family, we'll be here without our mics on to help you with those as well. So
with our mics on could be interesting.
We could.
Okay, so a little bit about why are we changing our daily schedule. For those of you that have been here for a while, actually, let's see. Quick show of hands. Who was here in 2012, 2013 when we changed our schedule the last time? All right, so we have some veterans in the room. Excellent. You're like, oh yeah, I was here. Here we go again. No, I'm just kidding. We look at everything that we do on a regular basis, and it's driven by a strategic plan. Our strategic plan in full is on the website. You can do a deep dive and spend as much time with it as you like. But here is the relevant piece that is driving this discussion today. Student experience. What is our learning environment like? And you can see that the goals and objectives for this piece of our strategic plan is that the daily schedule optimizes instructional time, supports diverse course offerings, recognizes the importance of extracurricular activities and free time, ensures optimal student health and academic performance, creates opportunities for collaboration, faculty comply with homework and workload guidelines, efficient and effective use of classroom space. So all of that falls under this area of our strategic plan. And our strategic plan asks us not to just do that once, but to do it on a regular basis. So everything in school world really has a shelf life, and daily schedules are no different. Daily schedules have a shelf life. When we lift it up and we look at it, we can find a bunch of different things. We can find, wow, it's exactly what we want. It's doing what we want it to do. It's perfect. We can find that it needs some small adjustments. Or we can also find it's really time to pitch it all out and start over again. So this is what's driving really the underlying thing of why are we changing our daily schedule. It's to look at the student experience and the learning environment that we're creating. What I like to say about a daily schedule in school world is it's how we spend our minutes. So oftentimes folks will talk to you about if you can know what your values are by looking at your checkbook, because that's where you spend your money or the things that you value.
This is where our students say, what's a checkbook?
Yeah, exactly. And so in school world, you know what our values are based on how we spend our minutes. That's the checkbook that we have during the day. The currency that we have for the school day is how we allocate minutes. So again, why change? We started with driven by the school strategic plan. Another key thing for us right now is we want to optimize that student sleep cycle. We've learned a lot about student sleep cycle over the last 18 months. And one of the school's major initiatives is student wellness, and how we spend our time during the day and what the rhythm of our day looks like is critical to student wellness.
So I saw some folks taking photos, which you're absolutely welcome to do, of the slides. I should clarify. But please know also that this will be information that will be shared with everyone, because we know not everyone can be here. We're also streaming live, so wave If you're not supposed to be here, hide. Like,
you said you were going to the
I
gym.
said I had a dental appointment. But we really want to be sure. One of our goals is to make sure we're transparent, make sure that we share what the process has been, and have you understand kind of how we got here and kind of where we're going. So we had the charge of looking at the daily schedule, so we formed a committee in order to do that and to dive in. And the work of the committee was to take the sort of collective wisdom in the room and the collective wisdom broadly across constituents and gather feedback. So we had a very thorough process. And the committee's function in terms of doing that was to then recommend to the Parker leadership team. The Parker leadership team is a team that includes Kevin Yaley, the 3 division heads, our Director of Development and Advancement, Director of Enrollment Management, CFO. So that's the sort of, in different organizations they have different names, but that's a leadership team. So all of this was vetted all the way through for the recommendation.
Okay.
We had a very hardworking committee, and the committee actually has continued to work. I said, well, please, can you join this? We'll do our work. And so we've actually taken the additional feedback, and we meet as a committee. We've made even some adjustments this year as well. So here's sort of a broad brush overview of the process. We knew that we had this charge. We formed our committee, and then we went into the work. And what you might find interesting is that we also brought in a consultant to give us a little bit of an outside view on our schedule and what values he felt were coming forward that maybe we weren't seeing because we were so close to it. But moving through, we spent through March doing the values part of the work. So there are different ways to approach things. You can sort of get a piece of paper and start allocating time. But we wanted to be sure we honor the strategic work of the daily schedule, which was what are the values that we want our schedule to reflect? Not build a schedule and then hope our values are coming through in the schedule. So we worked very hard in that process. We also had, with the faculty, we went through a workshop with them. They were able to provide additional very obvious daily schedule, which guiding principle, which Mr. Lang will tell you about. But we worked through that so that we took the time to do this so that when we got to let's look at the schedule and translate those values, it was values driven, not sort of other like unexplained, ununderstood, or some assumptions we had. So it was a pretty exciting time, and it was also challenging because if you've ever done values clarification work or tried to work with a group of people and understand like what's really the most important thing for us, you're going to have some very difficult and important conversations. And we had those very difficult and important conversations, and we have a faculty and staff and administration who care deeply about kids and our mission, and so our process reflected that.
Okay, so here are those guiding principles that Dr. Gillespie was just talking about. And it was a very robust process, and oftentimes we found that we had values that would come into conflict, and then we had to work with that. And you'll see there's some spots in the final product that we can talk about where two values came into conflict, and each of our groups kind of stood their ground, and we actually created something better by stepping into that conflict rather than stepping away from it. So our guiding principles were to reflect Parker's mission and vision, compliance for accreditation and allocation of time. I'm happy to let you know that Parker is significantly over the minimums required by our governing bodies for number of school days and number of hours. Optimize the student sleep cycle, honor student and faculty wellness through a healthy pace of the day, community building and character development, professional collaboration and learning, supporting whole child education, equity, access, and inclusion, and then curriculum should drive the schedule. And we did have one of those moments, as Dr. Gillespie referred to, where we got the entire 6 through 12 faculty in a room, and we put up the drafts of all the guiding principles, and we asked folks, what are we missing? And sometimes when you're super close to things, you do miss things. And that last one, curriculum should drive the schedule, was one that faculty then said, we think you missed that one. We're like, oh,
We just
Yes.
assumed it.
It was
Like, of
implicit
course
in
it
our
does.
understanding. But then that also then became something that really helped us as we were moving forward to keep that in mind. So these are the things when we had different options that arose or different preferences by members of the daily schedule committee. Well, how do you resolve those things? You go back to the guiding principles that are rooted in the values for our community. And so then those things, these pieces actually have to be translated into something that can go into a daily schedule, a literal thing. So you have that paper version of the schedule in front of you. You'll see there's like a middle school break now. Well, that is a direct reflection of translating a healthy pace of the day into a tangible thing that goes into the schedule. And Dr. Gillespie is going to talk about the rest of the translated guiding principles.
So what you have in front of you is actually, you're reading a translated piece of work. Our schedule reflects that. So some of the examples there in terms of having school start at 8:30, and that means nothing happens before 8:30 for our kids. We have to honor and respect and hold that time. Moving back to 7 blocks in the upper school, some of you already cheered and I think said, well, look, the meeting's over, like there's a longer lunch. But that speaks to sort of pace of day in the upper school. That's a translated value as well. You'll see in the upper school, and I'll talk more about it when we go over the specific schedule, but having co-curricular time, how do we provide for equity and access to families and to kids to be able to take part in our whole program? It's to have some of our program during the day that's not exclusively the academic courses. And we heard that loud and clear. And so we were able to translate that into our schedule during some times the afternoon as well. Have some office hours around during the day as well as in the after school time. The part there that is not as obvious on your schedule is like, how do we now work with some classes where they're changing clothes, for example, for like dance class? When we schedule them, we can intentionally schedule them. Our hope as we put it together is that they could then have a little extra time to be able to not lose their instructional time. The professional collaboration and learning is critically important. So in addition to having our teachers engaging with your students and instructionally and providing additional support, they need that time to work together. And that's always been sort of a hallmark of great schools. Like great schools, we're professionals. And just as professionals in every other industry, we need that time to work and to plan and to make sure our curriculum is relevant, that instructionally we're sound, that we're meeting the needs of kids, that we're staying current. So that's another value. Community time was a huge value, and you see how that was translated. So I think we'll get it more in the specifics. But if you kind of follow the thinking, which is what's important to us, and we work through that and figured out, okay, these things are important. There are other important things, but they didn't rise to the level of our guiding principles. And then we did the work of saying, what would this look like in our schedule? And that's why I'm saying you have sort of our values are reflected in this schedule. And I should also say, like, there's no perfect schedule, right?
Correct.
The only wins we get are Jeans Fridays and Coffee Cart. That's
Indeed.
like, and Coffee Cart needs to have non-caffeine and hot chocolate and like other things, but it's important to acknowledge that, and I feel we know this to be true. We also are very, very excited about the changes that we're making because we feel it really upholds our values.
Yeah, and so an example of a translated guiding principle that really lets us know how did the group do its work. You heard Dr. Gillespie talking about the importance of moving to 7 blocks in the upper school for student wellness. In the middle school, our focus on the whole child and providing a program that gives students access to physical education, art, and music every day is really part of our value system in the middle school. We want all students to be able to do that, and that requires 8 blocks in a day. So there were a few meetings of like 8 blocks, 7 blocks, 8 blocks, 7 blocks. It's like one of those old school cartoons, But we ended up saying, well, wait. If the upper school goes to 7 blocks and the middle school keeps 8 blocks, the upper school can have a longer lunch.
Yay.
And the middle school can add a 15-minute block and it's a win all the way around. But it took us a while to get there. And it wouldn't have happened if we wouldn't have actually said, what is the value that we want to pursue here, rather than what is the technical fix. So with that, a little bit about how to read this. When we presented, we call it, Dr. Glessman and I call this our roadshow. I think this is either number 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And one of the times that we presented, we got excellent feedback from a group that said, we don't read these things, so we don't really know how they work, so could you do that? So we're building that into, how does one read a school daily schedule? So the school day for faculty, so faculty professionally available hours are 8 to 4. That is our expectation as our divisional leadership, that faculty are here from 8 to 4. From 8 to 8:30, we've defined that time as professionally available. So what does that mean? That means faculty are in their classroom. They're available to me if I want to meet with them. They're available to their department chair, to their teaching teams, and they may be available to students by appointment. So that's professionally available. We know that not all students will fit into the office hours time at the end of the day, so they can do that. But again, kind of referencing back to what Dr. Gillespie said earlier, we want to keep 8:30 and before 8:30 as a sacred space for our kids. If we start putting things into that 8 to 8:30 spot on a regular basis, it will drift, and pretty soon we'll have defeated the purpose of moving to an 8:30 start in the first place. So then each of the letters is what we call a carrier block. And a block for a given student in the middle school could be a variety of things. It could be math, English, science, history. It could be their world language class. So what you'll see, we have what's called a rotating drop schedule, which means that we have more periods scheduled than will fit in an entire day. So students meet their classes 4 times in a week for a total number of instructional minutes of 200 minutes. And what that looks like if we just follow A across the week, oh, that's right, the laser doesn't work on this thing. So I'll use my finger, which does work. A is first period on Monday. But then it drops to second period on Tuesday, third period on Wednesday, and it falls after lunch on Thursday, and then A block does not meet on Friday. So the purpose of that is driven by what we know about students' brains. If you're, I'll just use my own content area. If you're not an English student, if that's not your thing and it doesn't make you happy, you're like, oh, we're going to go talk about English and things with Mr. Lang, Snoozeville, and that A block happens every morning, your chances of success in that class are diminished. However, if what we know about students' brains is that if we move that time during the day so that they're experiencing the content with the faculty member at a different time in the day, they have a better opportunity of actually having academic success in that class, just based on giving them a different time to interact with the faculty member and the content. So that's what happens, and you can see that on Monday, we go all the way through, and I'll just stop here at E block for a second, because that would be the end of what we would call our traditional academic classes for the day. Students also have an F block. It hasn't met on Monday, so it's the first period on Tuesday. And then it just goes F, and then right back to A. So we've tried to keep it, as for the most part, have an alphabetical flow to it. And the kids get this really quickly. So with that, some of the changes that we made, you can see they're not letter carriers, but what they are is their PE, art, and music rotations. So within each of these blocks here, what you see is that students have, depending upon their grade, all 6th graders go to PE at the same time. That can be a terrifying sight.
Come to the field house anytime. That's
yes. It's like, whoo, wow. I think the announcement is take those PE uniforms home and wash them. All 7th graders go to art at the same time. All 8th graders go to music at the same time. And within those banded time blocks, they're going to different things. So you know your child's schedule. If they're going to music, that means they may be going to guitar, they may be going to band, they may be going to chorus. So they split up, but it's all that's happening at the same time. And what that allows us to do then also is in places capture some efficiencies, which I'll talk about on the next slide. So the other probably very significant change that you're noticing is that we've moved faculty professional development to the afternoon. So instead of late start Wednesday, we will have early dismissal Wednesday. And part of that, there are many drivers for that.
I love the things that like different people cheer. It's like, this is fascinating. We do it again at 12:30 if you'd like to come back.
If you'd like the repeat performance, see if it changes. One of the things that drives that, there are so many different drivers, but one of the things is we give the start of our school day kind of a steady target. It also benefits our students who, both in middle school and the upper school, who might have things to do in the afternoon or who might also be challenged because they're going to their sports competition happens or things like that. But it also preserves this really important time, faculty professional development time. And I know I've had enough conversations now that faculty professional development time and full professional development days, I understand those are a challenge for some of our families. We've heard that feedback, and we try and make them predictable, and we try and make them let you know when they are in advance. And I really want to take this opportunity to let you know, though, that is directly benefiting your children. That is our opportunity to really be together and to make sure that we're at the top of our craft. And then office hours, every day except for Wednesday, 3:30 to 4, teachers are expected to be in their classrooms, available to students on a drop-in basis for tutoring, extra help, things like that. Students who need specific help are still, their best bet's going to be to make an appointment, which can be during the office hours time or could be in the professionally available time, because that is a kind of more of a group environment. So what that looks like with some handy dandy little yellow stickers. Faculty are available on campus beginning at 8. Advisory time, we've been able to preserve our advisory time here. So we still have 100 minutes of advisory blocked out in our middle school schedule. Social emotional learning, character education, study skills, a little bit of homework time, all happens in that space. I'll give you an example. This week in 8th grade, we're talking about academic integrity. We watch a little snippet from School Ties, and it gives us the opportunity to talk about who has responsibility in an environment that has an expectation of honesty and truthfulness. And at the same time, if you've ever seen that movie, or if you haven't, I recommend it. It's very good. And there's one student who is different from all the others. And that student ends up being the one that gets blamed for the cheating when that student wasn't the one who actually cheated. So we have great ethical dilemma conversations like that, while at the same time bringing forward in our students the skill set to be able to say, I don't need to do that. I can succeed on my own merit. So we coordinated with the upper school, as I mentioned, so that now middle school has a break. We saw this happening in an ad hoc fashion when our 6th grade advisors were letting their 6th graders go and have about 10 minutes to run around and be a little crazy before advisory started on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we just observed that and said, 11-year-olds, it really helps for them to run around a little bit more. So we built some runaround time in there. It's great now that we have the sport court in the middle school area, and they blow off steam for about 15 minutes and then they're ready to re-engage. Again, I mentioned that we honor the whole child. Art, music, and PE have equivalent instructional minutes for all of our courses. Here's the time built into the day for professional development, and faculty are available for support from 3:30 to 4. One of the big improvements that we get, and I'll actually go back, oops, which way did I go? Too many? Too many. One of the big improvements, if you look here, 7th grade athletics, 8th grade athletics, 8th grade athletics, 7th grade athletics, 7th and 8th grade athletics, 7th and 8th grade athletics. By moving athletics to the end of the day, we are both decreasing missed instructional time for athletic competitions, and we are also creating an opportunity for our athletics department to hire very high quality off-campus coaches. By being able to provide them with a steady start time, like you can come, so here's our pitch to our off-campus coaches, come and have a great lunch. Get ready for your class, do 7th and 8th grade, and then what typically happens when we have our very talented off-campus coaches, they then start working with our varsity program as well. So our students are starting to see consistency in their coaches, and our coaches are learning the values of Parker. That's one of the most difficult things to do with off-campus coaches is, yes, you're great at your craft and you know your sport, but we're about way more than that. So being able to give them that opportunity to work with our students from 7th through 12th grade really creates a different environment for them, and it'll make it easier for our athletics teams. So I did a lot of talking. I'm sorry about that.
Hey.
Here you go.
Oops,
now
back.
It's going to be,
there.
I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gillespie to talk about the upper school.
All right, so in the upper school, and you have the schedules in front of you, one of the things I want to point out, which you know from your experience, but you may not be thinking about it in the same way, is one of our values that, in terms of guiding principles, that is part of achieving them, is our investment in our crossover program. So we are able to offer, in the upper school, we have 537 sections, like number of times kids meet in a space with an adult, like it's a lot. We can provide the program we can provide, and the middle school can have the program the middle school has, because we have faculty members who work grades 6 through 12. So that's true of all of our arts, our visual arts, performing arts, and PE, but we also have more than 12 teachers who also cross over in social studies. They may cross over in, they certainly do in our language program. We're able to offer Mandarin, French, Spanish, all the way through because of the crossover program. So one of the sort of essential points that I don't want to have you all leave without sharing is that we went through a process of saying, should our schedules be aligned? Why should our schedules be aligned? Would it be easier if we had an upper school program and a middle school program, and middle school could do middle school's thing and we could do our thing? It's actually, that is not what is best for our students. What is best for our students is actually to work together and have our programs and our schedule reflect that value. So we all benefit from having our schedules close, but as Mr. Lang shared, there's like a little parts where it's a little different that we can have the programming we feel are best for students in the upper school, and the middle school can have that same benefit. So it's, and that's hard work. It's hard work to build a program where certain things are dependent and independent variables, and how many pieces are you moving around. So I think we'll go to the next one. Well, wait, will you go back a sec?
Yep. Whoops.
Or not. It's okay.
There we go.
Yay.
It was finicky for a moment.
It's finicky. So one of the things, like broadly, because when the little yellow things come up, I think visually, although you have it in your hands, it may be a little hard to see. So we had, the reason why we had this 8 back to 7 is that we wanted to reclaim some time, important time for our students. And so just as Mr. Lang was sharing about that community time, you'll see it twice there. You'll also see we have this additional time at the end. So I'll talk a little bit more. You can go ahead. Thanks. So the first one is shifting from 8 to 7 classes. That's to allow for the community programming, the wellness programming. Raise your hand if your child came home and said anything about e-cigarettes. Oh, they were there. They were totally engaged. They were. Go, if your child didn't and your child's in the upper school, say, hey, heard Ms. Davigny talked about the teen brain and how it grows and develops, and maybe Nurse Maggie shared a little information with you. Let's have a conversation. Do it side by side with boys. It works better than face to face, by the way. Little advice. And in the car, they're locked in. But that is the time that we need. Like we would, lots of communication. Like, are you going to have some time to share with our students about this? We really want to have conversations about relationships. We want to have the kids know and understand some things that impact their lives. We had Dr. Twenge come. We've had the wellness assembly. We also had this extraordinary assembly on Tuesday, and it happened to have 2 this week because of scheduling, where 4 groups of students shared about their learning experiences. Football's trip up to NorCal, the trip to the San Diego Diplomacy Conference, the trip to Pure Water in San Diego, and the ASB's area conference. And they shared what they learned in that setting. That's valuable time. We also have advisory, which meets in that slot. And we also have grade level meetings where we get the groups of grades together with their grade level deans. and they're able to do programming specific to that grade level. And so that's very valuable time for us. We also knew that we needed to have this time, which is a lot like the paragraph, that is what we currently call flex time. But what has happened is flex time has been used differently, and students are like, I need my flex time, and we were kept taking it away because that's the feeling they had. It was always set up, or apparently it was intended to be this time as I'm describing community time. But what happened is it was less and less programmed, and then all of a sudden we came back around and said, whoa, we need time together. Like, we need to have advisory. It was this idea that we were taking something away. This office hour time, students have agency and independence, which is absolutely appropriate for upper school students. Teachers will be available. Students may choose to see teachers. They may do a group project. The only slot of students who will not have choices the whole time are our new 9th graders, because we have 9th grade specific programming that we will slot in there, but not necessarily for the whole year. So that's what that faculty time, collaboration time is. That's not time we're going to take back for an assembly. We now have time for assembly. We have time for advisory, and this time stays for exactly what it is, which has a great value to our students as well. It also allows our students, from an equity and access perspective, to be able to be present if they have other afternoon responsibilities. Many of our students are caregivers to siblings, or they have so this happens in the school day, so there's not that sort of tension and pressure on them, so it's another access. We also have been hearing, I can't remember how many clubs we have this year, because club fair is really all about food. Then all the kids sign up, and then which clubs really meet? But we also didn't have time for that, and students were trying to wedge in time for clubs. And if we say that's a value, that students develop interest, work together, serve in leadership and followership roles, they need time to do that. So this time is also for clubs. Important to note that, one, students do not have to stay beyond their academic commitments, except for if a student is in 9th grade and we have programming, or a teacher or the grade level dean is requiring them to stay to get extra help. We will say, you're not going home, you're going to be doing this instead. And they will be super happy about that. And they may say a few things, but just believe like half of what they say. Athletic practices on these 2 days, on Mondays and Wednesdays when we have our meeting, those practices may start at 3:30, but on the other days, practice will not start until 4. Part of it is our coaches are with our middle schoolers, and the other part is we need to protect the time students have for their seeking out help, as well as second block, which is new, which is the co-curricular time. So the co-curricular time is specifically for our academic competition teams, and we have many of those. And so those advisors will be in that space, depending on how often they meet. The rest of the time, that co-curricular time is open time for students. Once again, they can use it however, like if they want to do homework or do group projects, but faculty will not be available to them. That's our planning time. One of the changes in going from 8 to 7 is we drop a planning block. So our teachers are losing a planning block. We need to get some of that time back because they need to really be working together on programming and instruction for your kids. And so that will happen there. I think I hit everything. Okay.
Okay. So the next piece is talk a little bit about what a typical day looks like for a middle school and upper school student who is driven to school. So I'm not going to get into if your child takes the bus, because we have our transportation consultant here who will speak to that after I'm done with this slide. So if you drive your child, this is what their day could potentially look like. And what that means is if we look at both the blue hatched time and the academic day, and then the blue hatched time at the end of the day, our campus opens at 7 a.m. So that's for both middle and upper school students. The campus will open at 7 a.m. One of the things, again, back to what Dr. Gillespie said, Some of our students may not like this, and you'll hear about it at home, but they will need to be in a supervised environment if they're here before the school day begins.
Including upper schoolers. We'll talk more about that.
So for right now, those of you that have children who go to the homework club for middle school after school, it's held in this building. Very similar experience. We'll have staffing here in the morning for students to go and have that space available to them for homework time, for just they need to be here because of your family arrangements, things like that. It will be a supervised space. We are talking to our food service provider to have breakfast available for purchase, things like that. So that time from 7.
I think I got a woo-woo.
Yeah, from 7 to 8:30. If you're a middle school student, you'll need to come and be in a supervised environment. Since faculty are here at 8 o'clock, middle school students then may go over to the middle school area because we have what I'd like to say, a critical mass of adults that are just having eyeballs on them. But before that, so it's really about safety and supervision. I know our kids won't really get that at the beginning, so I ask for your help in communicating to that. But there will not, I will not have an expectation for a faculty member to be here at 7 a.m. So your children could actually be over, if they go over to the middle school, they will be unsupervised, and that's not something that we want to have happen over there in an unsupervised space.
Yeah, in the upper school, we have our library opens, library will open 45 minutes before school starts, so it's 7:45. So upper schoolers who are here for the first part will be able to leave and go to the library at 7:45. So that we know that space, and some of them really count on a chunk of time to get some things done then, so we'll preserve that. But until that time, they will need to be here and supervise, and we'll make that really clear. The other point is that we're deeply committed to getting the optimal benefit of sleep, and we also know not every student will benefit from that, and we know that. We know that not all students will be able to, don't have access to coming to school later. I just want to say we know that is the case, and we'll do our best. They benefit from the whole schedule, but not that particular element. So I want to acknowledge that. And also note that, to the best of our ability, providing and having them learn how to use time if they need to be at school before, and how do they shift some things maybe out of their evening so they have better wellness at that time, knowing that they're always going to have this chunk of time. So we'll be working with students who have, kind of how they can best use that to their advantage when they're not able to have a later arrival to school.
So and you see some of that happening right now. I think that's an excellent point. Depending upon where your family's coming from, driving from, you all have different demands on your traffic patterns and your own the own rest of your life. But if you ever see me walking around in the afternoon talking to students, middle school students, one of my pitches is we let them run wild from about 2:50 to 3:30 because they need to do that at the end of the school day. And then after that, I'm asking them, hey, are you doing your homework? You're getting your stuff done? Oh, I don't have that much homework. And I'm like, why don't you go sit down, get it done, and go home and be free? Be free. When you get home, that means you could sit at the dinner table and have a conversation with your parents. You could read a book of your own choosing.
No, really, they do that. Set the bar here, set the bar here.
I know, exactly.
They're capable. Don't let them convince you otherwise.
And as Dr. Gillespie was saying, if your child is still going to need to get here early, perhaps they can start to figure out how to use this time in a way that's productive.
Yeah.
Remember, in middle school, we're starting to challenge them to think about their time in more than just a day. We're asking them to start thinking about it in weeks. So if they have a project due, maybe they can budget some of their project time into that morning time or their study time. Rather than actually doing homework that needs to be turned in that day, they can be using that time in order to be productive with their studying. And we ask students, chunk your studying. Trying to get the vocabulary list 23 words the night before is not good study practice. Doing 5 words at a time every day in the morning when you know you're going to be here at 7:30, that's going to lead to good learning. So those are the kinds of things that we're talking about in middle school. Then the academic day happens, and you see from 3:30 to 4 is teacher office hours for both divisions. And then homework club from 3 to 6. So in middle school, Our middle school day ends at the absolute edge, 6 p.m. That's when supervision stops for middle schoolers. So you can think of the day, if you want to get the outside edges of the day, here at Parker for middle school, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Upper school is a whole nother bag of tricks, so I'll turn it over to Dr. Gillespie to talk about the end of the upper school day.
The upper school day, it depends on the student's activity. So we have supervised, so for example, robotics has different times, but we have director and mentors who are employees of the school with students. If we have drama club is having rehearsals, and it's tech week and they're preparing for productions and all of that. So our upper school day will go longer, but the assumption is, and when many of us are here attending things, is that the kids are somewhere where there's an adult who's got eyes and understands whereabouts on the campus. All the classroom doors are locked and all of that, but it's for sure depending on a student's commitments, or they're coming to cheer on a team and they're here at school. Like, we really encourage that, and we love when the kids have figured out how to make all those good choices about when they're participating in the life of the school. So that's why does it end? Upper school never ends. I've been in upper school for 29 years.
Okay, so if your child rides the bus, and some of you probably here are in exactly that situation, I'm going to invite Ryan Hahn to come up and talk a little bit about what's happening with our transportation options. So Ryan, I turn it over to you.
Well, good morning again to about half of you that were at the transportation feedback session. Thank you for coming again. Just wanted to let you know who I am. My name's Ryan Hahn. I work for a company called School Bus Consultants, and we are a very large company that helps schools, public and private, in all sorts of through all sorts of transitions and needs, whether it comes to routing, to management plans, where we have people come in and work with schools to kind of help them get on their feet through transitions. We clean up all sorts of different efficiency measures that help make the transportation program part of the school's strategic plan. And that's exactly why the Francis Parker School hired us to come in here. And we started with an overall assessment of the transportation program. Then that turned into me being here as the last director of transportation, retired after 44 years in June. And so I took the helm over the summer. We hired a new transportation manager, Cynthia Suarez. She's in the back. And she's working with me right now, and then I leave at the end of October and then start working on this project, which we're going to talk about a little bit. I would like to thank the people who came. Raise your hand if you came to the transportation session. There's quite a few of you. Some of you emailed me afterwards. Thank you for that. I haven't had time to respond. I got like 70 emails. But I'm printing them all and putting all the data down so that your feedback is heard. So a couple big things. We are still in feedback solicitation mode. There have not been decisions made. The integration of late start and the reorganization of the transportation department could not have come at a better time together so that one supports the other. So we really need you to help me understand what your individual needs are so that collectively I can put some recommendations together for some options for administration to look through and then adopt. But what we did find is that we have a long-term access concern for children reaching the Francis Parker School. As traffic increases in the San Diego area, as the population grows, as the way people work change, where they don't leave their home, but their child still needs to get to work, we realize that access to this school via a transportation system is going to become increasingly more important in people's decision to access this school for their child's education. In saying that, we want to work with you to build a transportation program that it will not meet everybody's needs one-on-one. We know that. It's more tailored to a mass transportation system. However, there are things that we can do within the current realm of the financial restraints that we have to make it more appealing to you. So if you say if you build it, they will come. That's true as long as it works for people. So there's a couple things that we've heard. That middle school, upper school advisory after school is very important for bus riding students to be able to access that time. Direct transportation to each campus is preferred. Students utilizing transportation want to benefit from the late start. Dr. Gillespie was very frank with you that there are challenges to getting students here from the outer reaches. We service 90 zip codes. So the reality of it is there may not be a benefit for children coming 45, 50 minutes away from here. That's just the complications of managing through traffic to get your child here on time for school. The later the start time in the morning, the heavier the traffic in some directions, not all, in some directions, and that creates another challenge to get students here. And convenience of stops and geographic areas of coverage for the transportation program. One of the things I learned from the group that we met with two different groups. It was about 30 people in the morning and 7 at night, and learned a lot from them. But we learned that stops could be better aligned with mass transportation options and park and ride areas for high school, middle school, and upper school students to be able to, once they start driving, park their car somewhere where they can access that, not just only on the late bus after activities, but also after school to drive siblings home from that location. So that was great feedback for us to hear. I do want to tell you that I have the next couple months. I'm here present on campus until October 31st, and then poof, I fly off on Halloween, and it's kind of my ghost trick. I'm a ghost that day. But I'm on contract with the school till the end of June in a half-time capacity, but I'm remote mostly. And my job is to work through this with the principals and the administration at the school. I'd encourage you to write down my email address. I do have a Francis Parker email. It's rhahn@francisparker.org. And I would encourage you to please share any thoughts that you have. We're still in creation mode in this. And I want you to know that we've heard these things, and as we go forward to make a plan, there's a routing and bell time study analysis that's going to happen after the school gives us our bell times. And what we do with that information is we build a system to tailor to support the school to getting kids with as many of the advantages and topics that you've discussed as possible to help create the experience that the child needs in the building to tailor the bus system to it. So that's our goal, that's our focus. If you want to talk with me, I'll be in the room after. If you want to email me, that's fine. I know that there's one parent, she's over there. She wants to come talk with me in my office. I'm happy to do that. I'd love to, you can come to lunch here, and there's a little different variation of salad bar every day. That's what I hone in on. I'd love to sit down and visit with you. So thank you.
Thanks.
Is there any, I don't know who to hand it off, but I think the Q&A starts now.
Yep.
Yeah, there's one more. You can take that.
So what's next? Right here, we're in October 2019. We're hosting our parent information sessions today. We will be sharing a parent feedback form with you. It will mostly be an open-ended, what did we miss? Thoughts, concerns, things like that. Please do share your thoughts with us. Just like we did at the beginning of this process, if you remember all the way back then, we asked you for your feedback, and we took all of that and we aggregated it and we coded it, and that gave us some good direction as we were moving forward. We'll do that again. And then we'll launch the Daily Schedule Resource Board on campus. You know from using your on campus, that's where you go to find out about how your students doing. Across the top bar there, you see the resource page. There will be a new resource page created by our communications department with all of this kind of information. And then we move into the rest of the time.
Can you go back to the daily
sure can.
to upper school without the
Sure can.
call outs? I realize
This one.
Sometimes when you have such familiarity, you miss really big things. I wanted to make 2 points. One, the school day ends for academic courses for all students at 2:35. One of the things that we heard loud and clear from everyone was that our kids are missing a lot of time. Over the course of a year, 75% of our student population participates in athletics, and it's awesome. It's one of the many things that our kids do. And when they, because of travel times and schedules and off-campus training facilities like our tennis courts, golf courses, those kinds of things, they're missing a lot of class. So this is another point that it's like huge that I failed to point out. And the other part too is you'll see G Block is an afternoon only class. So there's no perfect way to meet all the goals. G Block is the only class that will not rotate. And it can't rotate because we need to be sure we can have the middle school benefit for kids. And we have to lock in a time so that we're able to have that rotation. And we believe in having our middle school kids have that incredible athletic experience because they become our upper school teams and benefit. So the G Block is the block that doesn't move. And we know that you're seeing it across there. So we can't, G Block is not a rotating block in our schedule. So I wanted to highlight that. But also that the school day ends for academic courses, but the school day doesn't end for your children. They do have a choice in that. We have students who do so many activities. So now they're able to do not all, for example, mock trial. They can have time to prep during that time, but our mock trial team of attorneys who are incredible, they've been working with us for about 7 years now, they come after work. So mock trial will always have this other time. And that's, the design of, that's the way our program works. But I just wanted to point that out, and also the huge benefit, which is fewer missed instructional minutes for our kids if they have early release.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, big one.
So then October from now until January of 2020, discovery, research, and planning of transportation routes, stops, and services. And then that last piece from February to March. We'll be presenting the daily schedule information at the upper school parent curriculum night, middle school parent coffee. We'll distribute the revised transportation routes, stops, and services, and we'll distribute the final daily schedule for 2020-21. So what you have in your hands, we feel very good about. We feel that we're pretty close. But based on the feedback that we get from today, there may be other things that we learn, or based on things that Ryan learns as we move through this, there may be some more small adjustments. But I think the large brush strokes and a majority of the medium-sized brush strokes are in your hands. So with that, I think we have time for questions. Thank you for waiting, by the way. I know some of you have had first slide. I've got 4 questions.
So it's great. There's a 15-minute break for middle school.
Yes.
I wonder why it isn't after 2 blocks, so that exactly in the middle. That seems to be even more beneficial. Or is it just to line up with upper school schedules?
To line up with upper school.
Mm-hmm. The middle school break and the upper school lunch share that same overall time block. Yep.
But is it possible to shift? Because they have 4 blocks, so the 15 minutes in between the 4 seems to be making more sense.
We looked at all different places to place that, and that's where it works so that our 2 schedules are complementary to one another. So that is a constraint there. Yep.
I had a question for the upper school schedule. The last block on Monday and Friday, where you have the student and faculty time, it said something about this could be where 9th grade has something. I'm wondering, because you're going from 8 blocks to 7 blocks, there currently is a mandatory free period plus life skills. Will life skills now be in that?
No, life
end of
skills
day?
will be one of the 7 blocks.
So are they
So
now
there's
losing
no longer
a free period?
There's no longer a mandatory free period for 9th grade. So that's where we'll capture some of the programming that happens.
Okay, so that's where, so that end of day could become free period part of the time though?
Yes.
Like on Tuesday, Thursday, for example?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then my other question is, first of all, great. You guys are doing. Thank you for doing it. Has it been considered to do longer block times so that there's fewer? Each class might have 3 instead of 4 classes per day, so that there's less homework days. Because right now, my 8th grader has hours and hours of homework, and I'm just curious if that was considered in order to reduce homework load.
Right, so we're tackling the homework load and questions about what's appropriate, meaningful homework. We're actually doing that work now. So whatever the schedule is, we're looking at those issues in both our divisions. The amount of instructional time, that was definitely something that we talked about in our daily schedule committee, and what it means to prepare teachers to teach in longer instructional blocks. So that's not something that we felt we could do well with the right amount of professional development and training in order to use that time in the most effective way for student learning. And as Mr. Lang said, the daily schedule is an iterative process. Like, we're going to keep this for a while, but as we move, I would imagine that discussion will come back up for a future schedule. But we weren't in a position to leverage the values, and we felt that it wasn't the time to change the length of instructional time. But that doesn't mean we're not talking about some of the other issues that you brought up.
Okay, thank you.
I would add to that there was that was one of the research topics for our daily schedule committee. They did look deeply, looking for the silver bullet. And there is no silver bullet when it comes to the length of instructional blocks. There's a lot of research that supports a variety, everything from what we currently have in 15 minutes to 90 minutes to 100 minutes. But ultimately, as Dr. Gillespie described, we decided that we would need more professional learning time before moving to that.
Who wants it? I'll ask more.
There you go.
Thank you. With respect to the G block being at the end of the day, that brings up the question, so if the upper schooler has G block free, that means they'll be done at 1:40 every day except Tuesday, correct? And then another question, are there typical blocks that upper schoolers are given as free? Like, they'll never have B free, or they'll always have, if they have 1 or 2, are there typical ones?
There's some that are more frequent with our 8-period rotation right now because of where the arts are, but we're going from 8 to 7. Now, 9th graders all have 7 classes. About 91 of our 10th graders have 7 classes, and then it's in the 50s. Most of our juniors and seniors only take 6 classes. That's part of how they balance their whole universe. So we'll be offering courses in order to take our curriculum, which is not, we're offering all the courses we're offering. It will be, there may be some students, but there just won't be as many because core courses are going to be all throughout because we've dropped H. And so we'll have more courses that more students are likely to need or want during that time. I will say this about, like, in terms of what's the impact when you go from 8 to 7. We can offer our courses. We have the classroom space. We have the lab space to provide for that. If students have singleton courses, that means there's only one section of the course. So example of singleton courses, Global Studies in Statecraft, AP Art History, and in both French and Mandarin. When you get to the upper levels, those are singleton courses. We only offer those once, hence the name. So if it's a singleton course and there are other courses at that time, students will be making choices. They have to make choices now, and they always are making choices. That's how we build out our schedule. But I just want to put that out there for when, especially in an area of study that is in the languages, where both French and Mandarin are the ones that have singleton courses at the higher levels. Our Spanish courses, we tend to have more sections, but not all. Like, there's, that also creates for students, like, I want to keep my language and I'm going to have to make choices here. So we will have students who have G free. And those are, like, that's also an opportunity.
Okay. Here we go.
First, I want to say, I think you've hit on almost all the complaints my kids have had coming into this meeting.
So the meeting's over now.
So
thank you for being here.
I said almost all,
I know.
but that's like a big
I said no
accomplishment
schedule's
in my
perfect.
house. The one thing that I wanted to ask was for the assemblies, I know that it's an important part of the character building and all of that, but could you take into consideration in the future more of the kids' input on the content of those assemblies? Because that's the one thing that I've been hearing for several years, is that maybe they're not really what the kids want to hear. It's probably what we all want to hear, but maybe there's some way to incorporate the kids into the planning process of who comes to present in those assemblies.
So we actually, that is a change we're making. So we've moved more to having a student-centered program, and we didn't always have students even in front of students. So it's actually yes, the answer is yes, and there will be things that they're like, yeah, I don't really want to hear about e-cigarettes, so we're doing it. But there are many others, and that's actually our goal. Our goal is to have students, it's actually part of character development, to provide students with agency and leadership and the opportunity to say, like, this matters to us and we want to be in this space. And so some of it is our students haven't been used to having those opportunities. We're working closely with ASB and then building out from there as well, and their job is also to represent others in their class and help build that up. So that's exactly the direction that we are going in, not for all, but as part, a critical voice. And Dr. Patsko, that's one of her charges, is to actually build this program out so that we really have that feel, which is hugely important in upper school.
Okay, and since I have the mic, one more small thing, because I have a middle and an upper. Because you haven't lengthened the middle school lunch time, is there anything going to be done about the efficiency of the lines? Because there's a lot of talk about us not having time to get through the line and eating toast or whatever because we want to have time to sit down to eat lunch.
Sure. So we have lunch duty daily and are keep an eye on that. And I think it depends somewhat on the student. So I have plenty of students who can figure out, like, they don't want to actually be at lunch. They want to be on the sport court. So they eat as fast as they can and run over the sport court. But we have adults proctoring those lines and moving them through as fast as we can. And that actually, the behavior of a middle school student at lunch is really what drove us to not extend that in the way that the upper school student does. Not the bad behavior. It's not bad. It's just they eat fast because they want to do other things. And instead gave us the choice of having the break, which that's also driven by our age group's behavior. So we'll keep an eye on it and keep working to make it better.
And broadly in upper school, we have been working closely with Mr. Santiago. He has figured out fast serve, like the way to get food on plates more quickly during assembly days, and also other options. And so I made sure, because 2 years ago there were 9th graders who didn't get lunch the first week, and I just thought, like, if my kid came home, I would just be super upset and want to understand why. We have other options, of course, like pasta. It's not just like, toast and water, but I do believe that, there are some other strategies that Mr. Santiago is looking at. And by extending time, we also want to have efficiencies, because we don't want that to be taking the time away from maybe other choices they're making. So we're working really closely. We have incredible dining services, and Mr. Santiago and his team are very responsive. So we all help out with lunch duty, and I can tell you all the kids have the opportunity to get the hot meal, except for the day we ran out of chicken nuggets and I was on duty, and I was like, there are no more chicken nuggets. So, like, you're standing in a line and there are no more nuggets. There are just no more nuggets. I cannot produce nuggets for you. So I was glad that I was the one having to deliver that news. Like, Dr. Leslie said there are no nuggets, and there weren't, but we've worked on that.
I have the mic. Sorry if I missed it. When are you presenting this formally to the students? Because I don't think I'll do a very good job when my kids are wanting to know everything you just told me today. I don't think I'll be able to explain it to them.
We talked about that at ASB. So we'll be presenting in the next couple weeks to the upper school kids, and then they'll get a copy of everything. So I don't know the date.
Yep.
Dr. Patsko is getting the date.
Same
So
for
yes.
middle school. We'll do it in a community meeting. Yep.
I have Mike. Dr. Gillespie, you mentioned athletics, and you mentioned that you would start athletics at 4 most days. So which days are you starting athletics?
So athletics can start at 3:30 on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Those are the days it's office hours. And so students still have the opportunity to see teachers. and also have practice start a little earlier. But on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're maintaining the 4 o'clock time because we don't want kids having to make a decision they don't need to make. There are plenty of decisions about what they sign up to do that they need to make. That's part of developing critical thinking and choices and values for adolescent development. But if kids are doing an academic league, for example, they should also have the opportunity to do sports and not feel like now they're going to be late for practice. And they get those office hours because teachers aren't available for office hours during the co-curricular time. We don't want to compete, like run that into each other, because we're saying, hey, teachers, like your work matters and your planning matters, and we need to be sure you're also doing that. So it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Athletic practices can start as early as 2:30. If there are with games and all that, we have 3:30. What did I say? Oh yeah, that'd be crazy. No, 3:30. Yeah.
Thank you.
Make sure it gets over there.
So that actually addressed my question, but I have a little bit of a different twist on it. I'm wondering if that time can be protected so that teams and groups and things can't encroach on office hours, because my student is being asked to make a choice, and it's never office hours.
Right. So here's the thing. Well, that's not what we want. So during that time, so I say athletics may, if we have students who need the full time, and we're doing it now, we're working with the coaches and the deans are working with the coaches. So we felt that on balance, we wanted to allow for that earlier time, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't be the whole time. And we'll also help in those conversations.
Okay, it's not just coaches, just.
Or others.
Yeah. So, and then my next question is, what happens to students who don't do a sport? I don't see a time to do an art and a PE, for example.
That's in their schedule.
How?
They have 7 blocks.
It's in one of the one of the carrier.
Oh,
blocks.
yeah, because the middle school schedule put what was in that block.
Yeah.
Our PE classes during the day are one of the letters, and our arts are one of the letters. So that's our program.
So then, I know you talked about free periods, but either you don't have free periods then. That's
If
what
you
I'm
take
not
7
quite
classes,
getting. You don't get a free period. And if you have to do a PE I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but if you have to do PE during the day because you're not doing a sport, that takes away that free time, right? And if you want to do an art, so I guess that's a choice, is what you're saying. So.
Yeah, so there's 7, not 8, and there's no mandatory free period, and that is a change.
This is a question regarding academic time. So Dan, you mentioned that you're well above the minimums required in academic time. In the upper school schedule, is this the last block of the day from 2:40 to 3:30 considered academic time?
No, it's not
in
a
that
course
calculation?
No, our students will have 200 minutes per week per course.
Okay. Fewer courses, just the same amount of time.
Yeah, so one of the differences, right now we have a floating 65-minute block, and so that 15 minutes we took away from all the feedback we received from everyone saying, like, it doesn't help us because it's not the same day for every course, and I haven't planned my curriculum accordingly to that, and we felt like there wasn't an overall benefit and value to that. So our uniform, so we're all at 200 minutes, which is really what we would want our students to have.
Okay.
And then we'll make sure if we can make sure the mic gets to that side, that'd be great.
This was a huge undertaking, so thank you for all the work that you've done. You were talking about the importance of a rotating schedule and the importance of not having English first period Monday through Friday. Along those lines, right after lunch can also be a time that students tend to zone out a bit. Not all students. But I see that you have B block after lunch 2 days in a row. Is that to align with the middle school arts?
Yeah, a lot of
PE
these are
something?
alignments, and it's in the upper school, the rotation isn't as perfect, like in terms of that, but part of it is also that our students have, they also have a varying, like we have students who love right after lunch. Those are some of the trade-offs in it, but the rotating schedule still ultimately has a benefit. But our students, especially those who will have G block, that's part of the conversations we have, because that is for sure for some students that will always be when their class is. It's the way the schedule works.
And it needs to be that way because of something in middle school?
No, actually no. If you look, what it's doing is just following the alphabetical pattern.
Yeah.
It happens to fall that way on a Wednesday because we also have faculty professional development in the afternoon. So if this were up in the morning instead, it would look different. But it's just following the alphabetical pattern.
Yeah. So we can poke at it some more.
In regards to the co-curricular programming that happens on Tuesday, Thursday, and you said that academic clubs like robotics can happen during that time, I presume they're still going to potentially be asked to come in late into the evening and weekends to work on those clubs, which is very
Right.
challenging, particularly if you're a sport kid.
Right. So we have co-curricular time, and that was part of the driver, but we knew that not all of our programming for co-curricular would be able to take place during the school day. We wanted to make sure we had some time for that. Some of it would be able to, but like I'll go back to Academic League. They'll train then, but their meets are after school. And robotics is the same way, but we didn't have that time. Some students couldn't, they weren't able to access History Day, for example. You can do some planning time then as well. So it will not, it does not eliminate things that happen outside of the school day for those particular extracurricular, co-curricular programs, which are the opt-in. So those are important conversations to have as a family. You know, to say what are you signing up for? What are the demands on that? Is that something that we'll want to do? And like I said, I think it's very interesting to see that our upper grade kids most of our upper grade kids only take 6 courses because they're making choices about their other time as well, and then managing that across the board. So if we could there have been hands up. Did you, Wendy?
Yeah, just real quickly, thank you again. It's beautiful. You're walking your talk and talking your walk. And anyway, one thought is, are we also talking to the coaches and the athletic director with regard to efficiency during practices? So we have practices that are significant chunks of time, and sometimes I've noted that perhaps that time isn't used as efficiently or effectively as it might be. So
these are all areas outside of the daily schedule, but I will. So that wasn't
sorry.
something. No, that's okay. That's not something we specifically addressed. The athletic director and the department chair for PE and health was served on the committee. But that's an important point. We're sharing about the daily schedule. Other ways, and that's one of them. Examples of what we're asking of kids in their time we raise up as a question. So feel free to share it as here's something I'd like for you to talk about, but it's not directly scheduled in the schedule.
Can you explain again the thought behind having G last all the time?
So
one second, just in addition to that, if your kid is in sports, they leave during that G block a lot. So we're concerned, or at least I'm concerned about if that G block is a highly academic course.
It can be any course. The way our schedule works is we can't plan around filling that block with something that for one student might be the one they feel they could miss more than the other. So like I said, there's limitations. I'm not going to pretend like there aren't limitations in the schedule, but the overall benefits on balance for all kids, and then individually for our kids.
Well, why don't you just rotate?
So that's part of making our 2 schedules align, because G block, where you see it on the upper school schedule, if you look at the middle school schedule, there it is. G block is music, art, and PE. So that has to be blocked for us, which means it drives some of the blocking for them. But I would say in
What can it be?
because this is where
Right.
all these teachers are now teaching. I'm not sure.
No,
Yes.
I don't understand why it can't be A, B, C, and it can't be other
Same
core
teachers.
classes.
If we gave this a letter in the middle school, it would be G. And so it has to be. Well, look at look where A block is on Monday in the middle school, and A block is on Monday in the upper school. So from here up, they're consistent. This is G block in the middle school has to stay fixed so that we're tied because we share the same campus, the same teachers, and the same time.
And also our other crossover teachers who aren't just art teachers, because we have a whole other curriculum and teachers where we can't double schedule them.
Right. The upper school can't have a block that just kind of operates differently than our block. And we can't have a block that operates differently than their block either. Otherwise, it disrupts the entire thing. And from here, 2:35, for most, there are some upper school sports, I think, that leave earlier than that. But for most of them,
yeah.
Cross-country, soccer, track.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a comment for robotics just quickly. I think that a lot of the evening work is driven by mentors who volunteer. Having lost my husband to a lot of mentorship for robotics, they generally can't be there until 6. So that's why it's the later evenings.
Yeah.
And then my question is, how does extended time testing fit into this schedule?
I think what we're going to end up seeing like we do now is that depending on when the kids have a longer time, it'll work the same way as when they're scheduling, but we'll have to find those times depending on if a student has a free block or not. So we'll be working with each student.
Okay, so it's not necessarily going to be kind of like this is the period that you should use for extended time testing. It'll be more on a student by student basis.
It will, yeah. So
with
we
their
have,
schedule, a schedule
we have
by
a
schedule
full-time person now who does all extended timing all day. So we have some more flexibility.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So that's been an enhancement.
Okay.
You need a mic for this. I almost called you Brooke.
So I also want to thank you. I wish the schedule were happening this year. I am thrilled. Just a question. Are we changing any of the academic overall graduation requirements for upper school now that we're reducing it by a block?
So we're only reducing the periods, but not the program. So there are no graduation requirement changes.
Okay, so they're okay.
Yeah.
They're
Not at
going to
this
be
time.
limited in their free periods.
Yes.
Real quick, how does this affect the 4-year plan that they did in 9th grade for those that had pretty much their whole 4 years planned out? And then a second question is, what do you know about what the other private schools are doing with this kind of schedule?
Well, our peer schools have many different schedules. Some also have late starts, so I'm not a sort of expert on their schedules. But in terms of the 4-year plan, there's still 7 slots. So the deans will just be working with the existing curriculum and program and coming up with where there are questions and changes a student wants to make.
I had a question in terms of the wellness and the free periods. So my son, who's a 12th grader, he took, in order so that he could have 2 free periods, just for his overall sanity, he took art in the summer, which was great. He was able to do in 3 weeks, get half a year credit, and he did that twice. That's no longer available. And I was wondering if you would consider allowing that to go back in for a 3-week to get half year credit to allow for more free periods.
So what we're doing now is we moved all arts courses to year-long courses, and so that's why you can get your full year credit for 6 weeks, but we don't, that went back to an old system that was grandfathered in, that's phased out.
Okay.
So
Because
you
he
can
did
get
wood shop half a year one summer and then
Yeah.
wood shop half a year the
So
next
he's
summer.
in the last group that can do that, but
Yeah.
students can take summer courses the 6 week and get a full art credit.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's because it's now art is now a year
Yeah.
long. Okay.
Just one last question. On the morning force field before
Yeah.
8:30, is it like for all sports, no matter what, even football?
So the
morning workout on Wednesday morning at 7:15?
So let me talk about that. No, this is why we're here, and I'm a straight shooter. So we have worked closely with athletics and had some very, very good conversations. There is some research that says you can activities before, but that's not for adolescents. The preponderance of research says that nothing, like the sleep time is the sleep time for all the students who will benefit from that aspect of the improvements to our schedule. And that includes anything, drama club, anything that we're providing. And that is actually what I've been talking to faculty about, is like staying very strong on that. And I am deeply committed to that. Like, we can't, otherwise, one of the core components, we have many other benefits in the schedule, will be lost, and that's not up for grabs for kids, right? They deserve for us to honor that value, and so I will be doing that.
Good.
And they're
Thank
on
you.
board, and they understand. So this isn't adversarial. It's not adversarial at all. It's that there are choices and there are trade-offs, and there are, that's how effective scheduling works. And you land in a place that you feel is the best possible combination of all those things. And for us, honoring all those values, like, we really feel like we've gotten to a good place on that. Good. It's been a good day. I know.
First off, thank you for all of your hard work in figuring this out. Kind of on that, I think it's a little bit different question than Kalpana's for test tank. So when a child is sick and misses and then has to come in, I believe it's right now a 6:45 option in the morning.
I just did it. Actually, yesterday.
Right,
I was
so
a
I
proctor.
think what you were saying is that then you're going to hold to that 8:30.
There will be no before school testing.
Okay, awesome.
Yes. Yes, thank you to everyone.
Yeah.
And the faculty, thank you. We're all thankful.
What are the other options then? Like, where would that...
We're looking at solutions to how do we provide. So for those of you who are in middle school, we have students who miss assessments, and rather than try to have them schedule with teachers, and like I said, like, we have 530 something sections, so we actually have a time set with proctors assigned to then have that test administration. If it's not extended time, that takes place in the ARC with our extended time person. So we have it in the morning, afternoons on certain days, and it allows for some equity around that, but it also is a morning time. So we're looking at the strategies around that and coming up. So one of the things that's important to note is that we're working on the schedule, and we feel we're very close to our final schedule. Our work is now on implementation. Ryan spoke about transportation. So we're looking at all those elements and aspects of implementation, things that we can predict and things that we may not realize, and then we have to address. So that's our work this year. That's why there's a timeline with it to do it well. And so Test Tank is on that list. 9th grade programming is on that list. So there are a lot of things on that list that we're going to deep dive and figure out, okay, what's the best way? What are the trade-offs? What are our principles? And keep doing that.
Okay, thank you. A follow-up question, or a different question. Currently, students in the high school can take an after-school PE, strength and conditioning. Would that still be offered?
Yes.
Okay.
I think this is something that you'll also look at with transportation, but right now we have kind of a staggered start between middle school and upper school, and this will be the same start, so we'll drop off kind of bottleneck.
So the transportation solution is what Ryan talked about. So we're looking at what's the best way to have transportation. So the goal would be not to have the best solution to provide for this schedule, but we don't have the answers to that. That's what the work is on implementation.
Okay, so the transportation beyond just the buses is also going to look at all the parents who drop their kids off, and now you're all going to be dropping off a little more at the same time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it kind of is a steady flow for those of us on Friday duty. But yeah,
But
you
right
all
now
have
it's
which
different
duty do you have?
start
We have
times.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're two waves.
Well,
So we'll be looking and having conversations, but it does have everyone coming and starting at the same time. And what I have found, not at this institution, but other institutions where I've been, is people actually sort out their own start time. Like, they adjust, and so after the first week or two, people have made adjustments and like, oh, we'll just leave 5 minutes earlier, and then we come through the line. So those are like practical things that are real, and how quickly we move people through the line, and what choices people make about when they come to school. And it generally sorts itself out. Usually takes about, in my experience, it takes about 2 weeks.
I think that one of the things to take into consideration for that as well is we have significantly increased capacity now in drop-off. Yeah. Where before we had, maybe 15 to 20 capacity car to queue on our campus, we now have about 75 or 80 cars that can queue on our property, and that has been very helpful. To Dr. Gillespie's point, it's still, on Thursdays at least, it seems like 7:25 to about 7:45. It's pretty crazy. And then it like magically disappears.
And then
so
right
we'll have to
before-
see what it looks like
And
as we
there's
start
a
the new
book on
schedule.
Escape too, so we have all kinds of things happening in carpool on it.
Yeah.
I have, so thank you for making all these changes. I think you're probably going to add another 10 years on my life expectancy through trying to get the kid out the door for school at 7:45. So I just want to ask a question about this year. It's kind of stressful for high school students, you know, with the late nights and the sports and getting into class at 7:45. Are you going to be more lenient with the tardies and maybe having teachers not schedule major tests, you know, first session or last session? I mean, are you going to make those changes to kind of help them transition through? No?
No.
Okay.
We would want to work with your child to maybe see like what's on your child's plate. Are there things and adjustments? Where can we like work with the dean? There may be things that we can do, but as a general school-wide upper school practice, we're not making those adjustments in terms of what happens during the instructional time at 7:45 or the last block. But teachers want to work with each student. I don't want you to have 10 years added to your life, or but I do want to have a conversation. So how about we have a conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not asking you to make major changes, just that teachers be aware that you're making these changes because you've decided that the schedule that you have now is not healthy for our children, right? Is that the reason why you made the changes?
And for other, well, part of it's asleep.
Yeah.
But the other part is that we're also not providing as much time for character education and wellness, and we're increasing that. Not that our schedule is currently harming that, but that we want to expand it. So it's not just one area of deficiency.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's almost 10 o'clock. So what I think it would be good, and folks have started to indicate that they need to go. So why don't we just take a pause for a second, and if you need to go, please feel free to get up and go. Dr. Gillespie and I will stay here, but we don't want you to feel like, I don't want to get up and walk out.
Oh yeah.
So we'll go ahead and pause for a second.
Who does this belong to?
Yep, you bet.
Oh,
Thank
wow.
you. Great.
Thank you for coming.
Hi, Jill. Dan. We've probably, yeah, indeed.
My son started in 6th grade, and I
This off.
I